Podcast, the show where we ask for insight about topics we think we know everything about, but don't. I am your host, Andy Ortiz. Welcome all to our third episode titled Another Brick in the Wall. That's right, everyone. Today on our show, we have checked our syllabi, sharpened our number 2 pencils, and the bell has rung for us to start a discussion on education. Ready to participate in our classroom today, to my immediate right.
Hi, Eric Pacheco.
All right, Eric, so what's your position in the educational system?
I'm the principal of an alternative school here in Texas.
All right, cool. And to his right.
Chris Castañeda.
All right, Chris, welcome. And what's your position in the educational system?
I am a teacher in a junior high level.
Cool. Thank you very much for being on the show today. To warm things up, we'll play a quick game called Save or Kill. I'll give out 2 suggestions. One can be saved, and the other one will be completely erased from existence. It's like a personality test. So, Eric, we'll start with you. A mechanical pencil or a number 2 pencil?
Number 2 pencil.
Chris?
Save or kill?
Yes.
Okay, save the mechanical pencil.
You gonna say the mechanical pencil?
Yeah.
I would have gone with the mechanical pencils.
Nah, man.
What's so efficient about a number 2 pencil?
They've been around for centuries, I guess. Well, at least
You get to a point and it doesn't exist anymore.
You got to stick with the classic.
All right.
Sometimes you got to appreciate a classic.
Classic. All right, Chris, college ruled paper or wide ruled paper?
Oh, man. I have to go with wide rule just because the margins are bigger.
Yeah?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Eric?
Most definitely.
Doesn't matter to me. I hardly ever stay in the lines.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to go with college just because I think I have a little bit more to write on.
Okay.
But, all right. All right, Eric, last one. Christmas break or summer break?
I think I'll probably go with Christmas break because the anticipation is the anticipation is just more lively. It's like, people are
Merry.
expecting something. Yeah, they're happier. They're merry.
Joyous season.
Yes.
The heat from the summer bearing
Well,
down
this
on
is
you.
true too. Of course, I don't know. I like to ride motorcycles, so in the summertime I get that opportunity more.
But in the end?
In the end, you know what? My birthday's around the Christmas time, so I'll go with the Christmas break.
right?
Yeah.
I'd go with
Chris?
I'd go with Christmas, just the spirit of it.
Yeah.
There's an anticipation,
Yeah.
like I said, and just, it's a family thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good answer.
But you don't necessarily have to kill summer just to save Christmas, right? We can.
Well, it's just hypothetical. Yeah. You killed summer, by the way, so thank you.
Well, great. I'll go down in history as the guy who killed summer. My name is Chris Castañeda. And
All right, guys. Thanks for that. So, like with every great story, we begin at the beginning. Chris, where did you attend elementary school?
I attended elementary school in Garland, Texas. I started out in Dallas ISD, but the majority of the time, or the majority of my elementary years were through Garland. I started in the English-only class here in Garland because I had transferred from bilingual in Dallas, and they said, hey, too much English, you're good to go. You don't need to stay in a bilingual class anymore.
Nice.
So that's actually probably a big decision.
That.
To not keep me, yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
Right. Eric, where did you attend elementary school?
well, we moved around a lot, so I went to actually quite a few of them, both in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then
Steel City.
yeah, that's right. Gotta go. Steel Curtain.
I learned something interesting about Pittsburgh. People from Pittsburgh, they put fries in everything. Like in their burgers and French fries.
I mean, isn't that normal?
No, it's not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
Now, so yeah, then of course we moved back to Michigan and outside the Detroit area, went to school there, and then to Flint,
Rock City.
and then back at Flint, and I went to a few different schools.
Flint,
there.
Michigan.
Yeah, it's where I was born, and then ultimately spent the majority of after moving around quite a bit to a few states, we moved back and spent my majority of my formative years there.
Okay. So you moved around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What type of connections did you have with your teachers if you were moving around, bouncing around from place to place?
Not a very good one, to be honest with you. I was not. I don't think any of my teachers, if you would have polled them even today, would have said I was their favorite student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I was
The black sheep.
no, I was just a pain in the butt. Just more than anything.
Yeah.
Academically, not a problem, but just behaviorally, just yeah.
You weren't challenged enough.
You might say that.
Okay.
You might have just said I enjoyed sometimes getting under people's skin.
Yeah.
So
Pushing buttons.
yeah,
Cause a
yeah.
little habit. Chris, do you remember what your connection was with your teachers in elementary school?
In elementary school, I'd say it was pretty solid. I didn't give a lot of issues to my teachers. I don't know. My parents, I guess, kind of instilled in me, like, hey, if they tell you something, make sure that you do it, and if we hear from them regarding any problems, there's going to be an issue here at home. So I was to that point where I kind of developed a guilt complex in late elementary school, where even if I did something remotely bad, like not even remotely bad, maybe stole like a pencil or something, it just riddled me with guilt, and just
Did you
for
immediately
a while,
give
it was
yourself up?
unhealthy. Yeah, I think it was an unhealthy thing in my childhood, but I grew out of it. I kind of saw the world in black and white as a kid, and obviously whenever you get to middle school and high school,
That
it's
changes.
not black and white.
Man, my mom would have liked that because she gave me the same spiel: don't get in trouble at school. If it's gonna come home, I'll fix it here. But I still didn't listen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're going to the next state anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I'm not gonna be here long.
Yeah.
But in middle school and high school, I think I started to develop a really good rapport with my teachers. Became more of a mentoring thing with them, especially in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really the only time I can say I can look back at a teacher and say that they really impacted. It was in the high school level.
School?
Yeah, I mean.
Did you have a specific subject that you connected with, or?
Well, it wasn't necessarily a subject, more than it was the person who was teaching.
What subject?
He was my algebra 2 teacher.
Algebra teacher.
Yeah, he was just a really stand-up guy, and kind of one of those people that didn't give up on you. Not kind of. He was one of those people who didn't give up on me, and so that probably made the biggest impact. But
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned both. Chris, you mentioned both of your parents and then teachers, and then Eric, you mentioned your teachers as well. In school, do you remember depending on anyone else for guidance in school, or was it just a teacher that you went to?
well,
Since
not
you had that connection.
yeah. That wasn't, like I said, until high school though. I mean, at home is where it started. I mean, like Chris was saying, the expectations were high coming out of the house, and so my mom made it very clear, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna do well in school, and do your best. Whether that means it's an A or a C, you're gonna do your best.
Yeah.
So it was outside of my algebra 2 teacher. No, that connection wasn't really there for me.
Chris.
Well, I did depend on my parents for the basic necessities, but in terms of my scholastic achievements, no. I had to figure out a lot of things on my own because, the language barrier was there for my mom. For my dad, it was more of an education barrier. He had maybe up until like a high school kind of education level. And I think once I started getting into 8th grade, 9th grade, and started doing some of the heavier topics, it was just solo dolo by there. My dad would help me with arithmetic here and there, but for the most part, especially in my high school years, I had to figure out a lot of the things on my own. And I had my teachers there to support me, obviously, but they don't go home with you. So
Yeah. So you just mentioned that you really didn't have anybody to depend on. Do you remember what material you struggled with the most? What challenged you the most about it? What subject?
it would probably have been science.
Science.
There was a lot of rote memorization there that I didn't like. Particularly with biology. A lot of memorization.
The vocabulary words and the
cells.
charts and the... I want to say maps, but that's wrong. It's more of a diagram of... Hey, here's a cell, and then here's the other million parts of it.
Because at least with physics and with chemistry, there was some sort of mathematical, foundation built into that. biology. It's
The
not
natural
as much.
sciences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So your strong suit is math, is what you're saying? Like, once you can see an equation, you can, okay.
Well, I don't even know if I'd argue that math is my strongest suit. I actually did better on my writing SATs than I did with math.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually became a really good writer after a teacher really just kind of gave me a, that's what I'm looking for.
Like a jumping off point.
Yeah, like a self-esteem boost. Because I never thought I was a good writer until she told me that I wrote with a good feeling and
Passion.
you know.
Yeah.
And it was an essay on the house on Mango Street.
Okay, yeah. Puerto Rican author. I can't remember
No, she's Chicana.
Chicana?
Uh-huh.
The house in,
That's
why am I
probably
confusing
why.
her? Oh, never mind.
That's probably why I did so well in it, 'cause it was one of the first books I actually closely identified with.
Okay.
You know, you can read something like A Tale of Two Cities or one of the classic books, but it's in a whole different era. Some of the topics and some of like the themes are still relevant today, obviously, because they've remained classics.
It's a classic, yeah. That's why it's a classic.
But it's not like the experience of reading like A House on Mango Street, where you see the vignettes of, you know, a Chicana girl basically going through what we have maybe experienced through life.
Okay.
So you can relate to it a little bit more.
All right. Eric, you mentioned that your Algebra 2 teacher was one you were closest to. Was algebra the subject that challenged you the most? Was this teacher that challenged you the most?
It probably was the only real challenge I think I felt academically coming up through school. I was very fortunate that I was always a curious kid, and that played well in terms of learning the material. It didn't play well in terms of, you know, staying out of trouble all the time. But because of that,
extracurricular activities.
yeah. But because of that curiosity, the academic side pretty much it came pretty easy coming up until I hit Algebra 2 and for whatever reason hit a block. And but aside from that, everything to me came relatively.
Did you struggle with? Do you remember struggling with Algebra 2 like the whole year, or maybe just?
You know, it was probably about half a semester, and my teacher just kind of. I don't know how he did it, but he was able to step aside, look at what I was doing, see where I was going wrong, and say, okay, try this. And he gave me a completely different way to approach it. The textbook said step 1, step 2, step 3, and he said, forget about that, don't even look at that. And he actually took the textbook away from me and just sat with me after school for, you know, a few days. We'd sit down and he'd just show me some things, and that worked.
Yeah.
So that helped.
Okay. Chris, I want to ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
You're a teacher, you're a middle school teacher, right? Mm-hmm. Junior high.
That's correct.
Where did your passion for education begin?
You know, I got a good, I graduated from high school, and I knew I wanted to do something with just straight math. The accounting didn't really appeal to me, engineering didn't really appeal to me. You call it laziness or whatever, but I just wanted something with heavy math. And, you know, you look at those options and you realize that there's not much you can really do besides teach with it. And so I kind of look back at my math teachers, and my math teachers were some of the best teachers in high school that really solidified my understanding of it. And the fact that I did so well in high school in math really pushed me to, okay, maybe I can teach it. Maybe I can impart it on people who might not understand it at a level that I do, but to kind of get them higher.
Did you like it? Did you like it as much before, or do you think it was a result of those teachers? Because you're talking about how well they.
I think it was a result of those teachers, the way that they taught it, the way that they had it structured. Because I was solid in math in middle school. I went to a magnet school for math and science, but I'll tell you, in Algebra 1 in 8th grade, I don't remember learning a thing in there. And I don't really blame the teacher. I think it's just the way the program was structured. It was more project-based. It's like, I can't learn that way. I need something basic before you get me into something higher, like more creating something. I need the basic foundation. You know, you need bricks before you can build a house.
The theory, yeah.
Not even the theory. I just need the basic algorithms to understand some of the algebraic concepts that we were supposed to learn there. So in geometry the next year, I had an excellent teacher who had taught for a long time. And we got to a section where we had to use algebraic equations to find the missing links of certain lines in a triangle or a square or something, you know? And I freaked out because I did not have that foundation. I didn't understand how to solve for a variable on one side.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that we teach the kids even in 7th grade now. But for me, I freaked out because everybody else got it but me.
Ooh.
And all she did was pull out a worksheet and it's like, follow the instructions here. She walked me through a step, and it became crystal clear to me.
So it clicked right away.
Yes, and when I went into Algebra 2 the next year, I had that foundation and I just ran with it.
Did you save the sheet or did you get rid of it?
No, I mean, I didn't save the sheet.
It's tattooed on his back.
It's tattooed on his back, yeah.
Well, I did keep a lot of my stuff. I did keep a lot of my notes from high school. They're at my parents' house in folders and stuff. So
you don't reference those back to those?
No,
now?
Not anymore. But it's just nice to
I gotta need that anymore.
Kinda,
I got my tattoo.
You know,
That's why it's on his back instead of on his stomach.
Yeah.
I did reference them in college though.
Okay.
Yeah, so that helped a lot. Just as the teachers, it's a good question. The teachers really, they did.
Oh, you found that out about yourself today.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Eric, so Chris mentioned teachers were sort of the stepping stone for his passion for education. Where did that process begin for you?
Mine was just, it was really organic in how it happened. Being the oldest child in my family, I had to, my mom was always working and had to help raise my siblings. And, she, single mom, depended on me for a lot of things too. And if something had to be done, it was just like, hey, mijo, can you do this? Can you fix this? Can you figure it out? And so it's kind of, okay. And you just find a way to do it. And what I really found out was that I liked helping people. You had something you're struggling with, you had something you needed help with, I'll help you. Yeah. And so it became one of those things where whether it was helping remodel a bathroom or helping my brother or sister with their homework, or even some of their friends would come to the house and I'd help them with their homework, it just kind of organically fell into place. And so in education, it's what you're doing on a daily basis. You're opening that door for people, whether that's the students. In my case, I deal a lot with the parents and helping them understand even about their own kids and their own kids at learning. So it kind of felt like just a good fit.
Yeah. Very charity, I guess, love would... I'm sorry, I'm using a bit of Christian terms here. Charity, just a good way of giving back. And is that how you see yourself? Like, hey, if I have something,
I don't know if I'm giving it back in
but
terms
sharing,
of...
I guess. It's
just I mean, if I can help you, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And if I can, make this path that you're walking a little easier, open a door for you, great. I hope to be able to do that. But it's just something, I don't know. I kind of feel like I was lucky enough to have found my vocation. You have jobs, you have careers, and then you have a vocation. And I think the difference being a job, you show up, you just do it for the paycheck. A career, you kind of invest yourself in and you go a little deeper. And a vocation is something you would do whether you got paid or not. And the good news is I get to get paid while doing this. So it's I feel like a pretty good fit for me.
It's beautiful. I remember as a kid, and I still do, when I wanted to ask a question to the teacher, I'd get a little nervous about that. I wouldn't know if my question would hit well. Like, okay, am I asking a stupid question or am I asking the right question? In your day-to-day jobs, do you see that in other students, and how do you deal with that?
I think kids struggle with that probably. Well, Chris, working in the middle school, I think there's a lot of issues at that age group that they struggle with just all around, but that's probably one of the big ones there. And even on into high school and later into college, you can even show up in your, I've been in doctoral level classes where somebody will ask a question and you see 3 people go, oh, I'm glad they asked that, because they had the same question and they didn't want to be the one to ask it. Personally, I didn't really struggle with that because I'm gonna ask you. I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean by that? Or is this correct? Do I understand what you mean? I'll just come on and ask you. But
how do you deal with that with your students?
I tell them, so just ask. You don't know until you ask. And the worst thing somebody's gonna do is what? Tell you no? Okay, are you gonna die from that if they tell you no? If they tell you you're wrong? Well, no. Okay, so ask the question. But that's my approach to it. And I guess maybe I don't see it as as big a deal.
As big a deal.
Ask the stupid question, because what you don't realize is there's 10 other people that are thinking the same thing, and it turns out it's not a stupid question at all. You might be the one that everybody goes, "Oh, I'm so glad they asked."
Yeah.
So,
Chris?
I have to piggyback on that in some sense. There are kids that are afraid to make mistakes or to ask. And what Eric said, stupid question. You know, they don't want to sound stupid in front of the class. But it's okay. We try to teach the kids that it's okay, to ask questions regardless. If you really don't understand something, like you said, just ask.
take a risk.
Yeah, take a risk, exactly. And I'm not gonna make fun of you for asking something silly. Like, there are just some times where you have brain farts, and you lose. Something's right in front of your face, but you don't process it correctly, and all it takes is that question. Everybody kind of looks at you funny, but I look at you with a straight face and answer it, But, it happens. And after a while, you get used to it.
Okay.
So, you got to be able to feel safe in an environment. And some of the, and it's hard for some of the kids to do that because middle school can be vicious, for lack of a better word. High school
Absolutely.
can be vicious, People can look at you and just say something or laugh and snicker, But at the end of the day, did you get what you asked for? Did you get the question answered?
Did you get
It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So,
okay.
Very
Very good answers.
Yeah.
So, picking off of what Chris just said about how kids can be cruel. So, I know kids in school form social groups to survive and form identity. And kids can be cruel and have that division amongst themselves. Do teachers do the same thing? And I'll start with you, Eric.
I guess my answer is that is people are people, humans are humans. Anytime you get a group of people together, that's going to naturally or organically occur, because you're going to find people that you can communicate better with. You're going to find people you connect with better, and I think that's just inherent in who we are as humans. I don't think the majority of teachers do it with a vicious heart or a vicious intention.
It's indirectly.
Yeah, you're going to communicate with people on a regular basis, and you're going to tend to draw to the people who share similar interests, so forth and so on. But, in terms of like making malicious, cliques within cliques, I think that's rare because, one, we're adults, we've kind of gotten past that, and two, you realize you're there to work with these people and you're there to help, the kids, and that sort of negative stigma is going to just tear down and morale of any environment. So
it's not competitive.
Yeah, I mean that's been my experience. So like I said, with just kind of people being people.
Okay. Chris, your thoughts on this? Do teachers form divisions and cliques?
To a certain extent, they do. They do form cliques. I don't know if it's necessarily out of a desire to harm someone, but with that being said, there are consequences when there is a certain group of teachers within an environment, and if they feel like someone in the department, for example, is not totally in line with something that they believe in, then they can start to ostracize that person slowly. Not directly all the time, but there's subtle conflicts that happen within either
Tension,
planning or
hey, I wanted to do it this
even
way.
social events, like if teachers want to get together after school to grab a bite to eat or at lunch.
They just don't invite that.
Teachers do that?
Yeah, it does happen, and it's unfortunate.
It is.
Because I'll be honest with you, I've said this to many educators in the past, and they go, after they think about it for the second, yeah, you're right. I think the teachers or even administrators end up reflecting the age groups with which they work. If you notice, elementary teachers, they're a lot more playful. They tend to focus on, well, let's make this fun in this game, and let's color, and or whatever the case may be.
Interactive.
And at the middle school, you tend to get the kids are Starting to maybe do some of that clicking up, or they're starting to, they still have the adolescent kind of curiosity and joking about, but they also feel like sometimes that they know all the answers.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you tend to see that reflected sometimes in the people who work in that environment. And then you get to the high school, and of
In
course,
what ways are they?
well, in some cases, I mean, the teachers are still willing to play and make,
Yeah.
games and be silly and make fools of themselves and just have a good time. But at the same time, it's also can go the other way just as quickly. And you can't tell me anything. I know what I'm doing. And
Chris, you're the middle school teacher here. Is there truth to what Eric is saying?
Yes, I believe so. I think there is. You do. I don't want to say you become what you teach, but you do relate to them more and more over
Yeah,
the
you're
years.
with them 8 hours a day.
My youth also helps me a lot, and the fact that I have a sister at that level
Okay.
can keep me in touch with a lot of the stuff that's going on and what a regular middle school student would be going through. So these kids relate to me. You
Yeah.
know, they listen to the same music that I do. Some of them have been through similar things that I have, like culturally speaking.
Yeah.
So I want to say in high school, though, the teachers do develop more of a mentoring relationship with some of the students, and that's something that I crave. And for the first time, I think last year, I kind of started to build on that, or 2 years ago actually, because I'm starting to see kids from 2 years ago. Like for example, yesterday, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, let me know whenever I can help you with anything here at the school. Like I'll be back for your birthday to bring you like a chocolate or something like that, like a bar of chocolate."
Yeah.
You know.
Now,
She did that. She did that 2 years in a row, and I guess she wanted to just keep the tradition going. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like I appreciate that. So you start fostering and building those relationships, and you kind of want to see what kind of fruit will grow from the tree that you planted back in 7th grade.
And that plays right into, I guess, the way I observe it is that when you think about it, when you're getting into the high school level, you're starting to gain your independence. You want it more and more and more. You start taking on different responsibilities, and it's reflected in how you interact with people, so forth and so on. And the teachers, again, reflect the audience. I mean, the majority of high school teachers are not going to sit down and, metaphorically speaking, hold your hand and walk you through like a middle school teacher would invest and I don't want to take away from being a high school teacher not putting in the time, but the approach is different. You're willing to get down and talk to a kid more about the personal issues because it's going to help them with the academic issues, where in the high school level it's more like you said, a mentoring relationship, and it's, I'm going to help you get through this, but you still have to do it on your own. I'm not going to spoon feed you. Get up, do the work, and so I think it comes back to, like he said, you almost begin to reflect the attitudes of who you spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
So something I'm curious about here is, do teachers hold seniority or achievements over other teachers?
Smiling and laughing because, again, it goes back to people being people. You've got jerks in every walk and aspect of life. Some people are very proud of, very cocky, very, this is what I can do and this is what I know. And then you got others who are very humble. So I think, yes, the short answer, there are teachers who do that.
Yeah.
But, again, I err on the side of believing that the vast majority of teachers would not be that way, just like they would not, be cliquish or do the things that, because for all the bad press that education and teachers get, that's such a small percentage of the people who do this.
So just like anything else where something's blown out of proportion in the media, yes, everywhere we go, we are going to encounter the good and the bad.
Absolutely. We're humans. We're people. We're predictable animals in that respect.
Yeah. Chris, do you have anything to add? Or?
Yes, there are some that hold seniority. There's good and bad in it. In the sense that you want to be able to go to somebody that knows and has been there, has been through their first year of teaching, has been through various administrations and has grown as a teacher.
The veteran.
To be able to rely on them. They become kind of someone to lean on to.
Yeah.
Whenever you're stuck somewhere, or somebody to go to whenever you have a question. With that being said, I don't think that they should hold a monopoly on various duties or responsibilities. Just because you've been there for 20 years doesn't mean that, you should
Right.
have every single say in everything that goes on in your department, or, your.
Those are the elementary school teachers acting childish, right?
No,
that could be at any level.
That could be
See,
at any level. Yeah.
it goes back to, I think that has to do with a lot the campus culture, though. If the culture is set up in such a way that, and I don't mean ethnicity, I don't mean gender, I mean the
just work
culture
culture,
within the
or
environment.
work culture.
If people are there and their attitude is, look, we're all in this together, I'm here to help you, you're here to help me, that becomes less of an issue. But then again, there's always going to be those holdouts that say, oh, I only teach this, or I'm only going to do this duty. And that's unfortunate that it gets like that. And I think it's the administration's job to kill that if that's becomes an issue. But one of the things that while I was listening to you, that came to mind was, I think it's interesting how he makes a good point. First year teachers, they're set out there to just sink or swim, make it happen. And they're expected to do the exact same job that somebody who's been doing this for 20 years has been doing. And, you go to somebody who's been there and taught through, different challenges and experienced different things, and you begin to rely on them. The interesting part is, after you've been in the job for 3-4 years, you don't even see the shift. You go from being that first year, second year teacher who's asking the questions to now these new cats are coming in and they're coming to you and they're asking you questions, and you become the teacher of the teachers. So it's a good way to put it. Hakuna Matata and all that. But and I think you can probably think of some times that some of the new teachers have come to you and asked you questions, and if you step back and look, and I remember when I was kind of struggled with that.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I think off air you've told me that this is now your 4th year.
My 5th year.
5th year, wow. See,
He's going on
5th
my
year.
Mm-hmm.
So has the circle...
Some of the newer teachers have asked me questions. I actually was asked to take more of a leadership role on my planning team.
Yeah.
So we're split into 7th and 8th grade. So they asked me if I could be the lead for the 8th grade team to make sure that we stay on track in planning, and make sure that I start the meeting off, hey, this is what we got to get done, et cetera, et cetera. And
keep them focused.
Keep them focused, and it kind of threw me for a loop because I haven't really had a leadership position before.
Oh.
So our new department head has been trying to delegate certain things because there's been a lot of tumultuous, changes in the past couple of years. Nobody's fault. It's just a change in culture and
expectations.
Everybody's got different sets of rules.
Have you found yourself, though, even outside of say an official departmental leader sort of capacity, just the new teachers who come and you just see them struggling, and they might ask a question, whether it's classroom management or what do you do in this situation? It might not be even just curriculum related, but you see them kind of going through those issues that 5 years ago it was your first year, and you can think back, oh yeah, I struggled with that, and then you're there to give them that advice, and you probably don't even realize. Of course, I'm just speaking out of turn. You've probably done that and didn't realize it. You've probably given those nuggets of wisdom that have helped out one of those younger teachers, and you don't even realize the impact you made. I think it's almost inevitable that happens. So
yeah. Well, and a lot of the teachers that we've hired are actually older than me, and they've had some sort of experience. So the good thing is that I can learn from them just as much as they can learn from me, because they've been there before. They have an older perspective on various topics. So it's a kind of an ebb and flow. So yeah, I mean, there's much to learn, regardless of whether you got 20 years or 1 year. The education's always evolving. Yeah. And right now, there's a lot of push with technology. There's a lot of push with differentiation in the classroom. There's a lot of push with, I don't want to say new age ideas, but we know more now than ever about how
we're learning new and different things.
And we move from a teacher-centered classroom to a student-centered classroom. One where they can be more
actively involved.
Yeah, actively involved. Instead of a teacher just saying, like, this is how it's going to go. We want the kids to ask questions. We want the kids to collaborate with each other.
Right, so you just mentioned that there's a change in education as it's evolving. Mm-hmm. So in my day, parents went to the school to interact with teachers. My mom could only go maybe twice a year for a teacher conference meeting. With the technology that you've now mentioned, Eric, how often do you now interact with a parent?
Well, I interact with them daily, in some cases multiple times throughout the day. But I think when it comes to how you mentioned the technology being more prevalent, it's kind of like it's a difference between, do you want a big puddle, meaning it's not deep but it covers a lot of maybe surface area, or do you want
Shallow.
a well, maybe surface area wise it doesn't cover a whole lot but it goes deep. And I think the amount of interaction is more frequent, but it doesn't necessarily translate into depth.
Okay.
A lot of times the parents, they can send you an email and ask you a question and you answer, and then the next time you have a conversation with them or you interact with their kids, you realize they're still not involved.
Right.
So
it's more of a crutch instead of a tool to...
No, I think that goes back to the individual person. I mean, it's very helpful. Don't get me wrong. I think if technology is used in the right manner, it's a very useful tool.
Yeah.
But and especially with today, everybody's got a computer in their pocket.
Right.
They send an email from their phone and they move on. But I'm just thinking how you put it. Your mom went a couple times a year, and unfortunately, my mom was up there quite often because I was always getting in trouble. But yeah, it wasn't. Now it's just an email
those
away.
Parents now? Like, oh, hey, my mom used to be like that, or does that hit you, or?
Sometimes, but then even being in the capacity or the position where I'm at, and the students that I deal with at the alternative campus, I mean, they're there for a reason, but even some of those parents are, hands off, and they'll send you an email just to say that, yeah, I sent an email.
I got it.
But they don't really
Message received, check.
They don't really pay attention. They don't really care. So.
Chris, how often do you interact with a parent now?
Almost daily. Definitely once a week. I send weekly emails, a mass email, and a lot of the times the parents will reply on a specific question. It's like, oh, so my kid's taking a test this day. He's going to be out. Is there something that he can do? Can he come and take it before or after? But you send it. You send it weekly, and you establish like, hey, I'm here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And the parents become more open to contacting you if there's a question.
Oh.
So, and really meet the teacher night is when you establish that. It's like, hey, I'm here for your kid and for you to answer questions. Obviously, there's always a stop time, like with work,
Yeah.
Like there's always a time where you have to cut everything off.
Yeah.
And the parents...
Balance.
Most of the parents are very, very, very good about that.
Okay.
I mean, you'll get the occasional parent that'll email you at like 2 o'clock in the morning with a random question, but... It may just be they have a weird work schedule, or it may.
They're not expecting a 2:30 answer.
Yeah, they're not expecting a 2:30 a.m. answer. So you answer it as soon as possible. And then technology is wonderful for that because, you're able to respond more quickly, and you don't have to. It's not like in the old days where you'd have to walk like 2 miles down the road or something, or you have to call because sometimes you're not even able to talk to them on the phone. But emails and messaging has changed that. It makes you. I don't know if it makes you closer, but like you said, it makes you more accessible.
But the communication is there.
Yeah, the communication.
And I want to be fair about something because he teaches at the middle school levels, and the majority of the kids I deal with are at the high school level. But I think a lot of that has to do with the grades that you're interacting with. For example, I have 2 young kids that I'm raising, and I am, continually communicating with their teachers. And I think even at the middle school level, you still kind of have that separation. They're not quite yet independent, and so the parents are really involved.
You're still relying on you,
Right. So, but I think the parents at the elementary levels, parents want to know everything, man. Oh, when's this happening? When's that happening? How's my kid doing? Hey, did they color inside the lines?
Because they're new parents, maybe?
Well, just because they're, I think a lot of that has to do with just, that's still your baby in terms of you're small and you want to be involved, right. And then at the junior high level, they kind of start to pull back and they realize, hey, my kid's starting to be a little more independent. They need to pick this up. And then by the high school level, it's kind of like, hey, are you doing your homework? Okay, great. And so, it's kind of...
All right, so moving on. My mom only had an elementary level education. We now live in the 21st century. Has the level of education of the parents changed? Does that affect your job? Chris, we'll start with you.
It depends on the environment you're teaching, to be honest with you. Uh, parents' education level is going to be different in, let's say, a small town in South Texas.
Yeah.
As opposed to Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
In California. Vice versa. You have to take socioeconomic status into account. You have to take whether it's an inner city, whether it's rural, suburban. There's a lot of factors that go into.
How about here
that.
in the city?
Here in this city environment, I would say that I have seen, and mind you, I only have 4 years in.
Yeah.
Right? But if I take into account what I've seen as a kid, growing into middle school and high school, and now I'm a teacher, I believe that the parents have become more educated.
Okay.
Yes, even if it's just associate's degrees, but
Yeah.
that
No,
goes
no
a
one's-
long way.
no, yeah.
I
You
mean,
gotta start somewhere.
they have something.
The
They
basis.
have a trade. There's something that they're knowledgeable about, and I'd say that the majority of the parents that I deal with now are like that. Mm-hmm.
And how does this affect you?
It affects me because I think they're more willing to go to bat for their kids. If a parent is uneducated, sometimes they might not be willing to speak out or be
Right.
willing to, say, hey, I think there's something wrong with my kid in terms of his education, or I think he needs more help. I think for example, and let's take an immigrant from Central American country or from Mexico. They might be less willing to engage the teacher because they don't really know how to talk to them because of their education level or because of even the language barrier.
Yeah.
Right?
That was my mom's case.
Yeah. So, if somebody that's been here has maybe gone through high school and stuff might call and say, like, well, hey, I didn't like the way that, you treated my kid today.
Yeah.
Or, I didn't like the way that, this was taught.
Right.
Is there another way that I can help him or help her? So, it just depends. But yes, I'd say overall, the education level has gone up and it has benefited me in terms of communication.
Oh.
It makes it easier to talk to the parents. They're more vocal.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, is this the same case for you, or?
Well, my mom was a field worker. My family's a family of migrants. It is the reason why we moved around a lot, and then of course, kind of continue the pattern. I didn't have to work in the fields or anything. I was very fortunate in that respect. But, you kind of start there and you think, well, does that set the tone? Mind you, my mom, she decided she was going to go back and put herself through college, and she graduated with her bachelor's around mid to late 30s. She was one of those ones that she didn't let the circumstance, dictate where she was going. But I think, while there are a lot of those stories because people are coming here to get educated, to learn, there's also to take into account, like what he was saying, some of these parents who, for whatever reason, be it a language barrier issue, just being, I don't understand the rules, so I don't know which questions to ask, sort of thing. A lot of times, it's not even about a level of formal education as much as it is about the fact that you can put your hand in your pocket, pull out your phone, and Google anything. So I think in terms of the level of education and how that affects what we do as teachers and educators in our job, we can't BS our way through stuff anymore because people have access to information, whether it's at the puddle depth level or the intense level. They can pull out their phone, Google you, and say and call BS on you on the spot, and that's changed the dynamic of the conversation. If you're going to speak to a topic, you better know what you're talking about because it could be the parent, the grandparent, or the student themselves, and they'll call you on it. And there's it makes you. I think what it's done for education and teachers in today's environment is you need to know your craft. You need to know what you're talking about when you're talking to somebody and be ready to answer that question at any time.
Yeah.
So I think it's brought the bar up, the level that you have to be willing, or your knowledge base has to be strong.
I think our culture, like, oh, hey, maybe 50 years ago, you didn't argue with the teacher. Whatever the teacher said was fact because they were the teacher. And now, I don't want to say, oh, there's a fighting chance, but you're leveling the playing field now.
Well, information is the
available.
key to anything, to getting ahead, to getting stronger, to moving forward in life. And before, you had to go to the library, pull out the card catalog, if you could get to the library, or if you're living in the rural, middle of nowhere, was there a library? Well, now you have, like I said, it's in your pocket. And you don't have a library and limited to, what does this library have in terms of what's on its shelves. You have the world at your fingertips. So like I said, I think today's teachers, they have to be on their game, and they have to not only know their content, they have to be strong in their pedagogy. They have to be strong in their understanding of this is how a person learns. So if I'm telling you this is what's going to benefit your kid, it's not because I'm just blowing smoke. There's a reason why.
Right.
And then, well, what is that reason? Okay, well, research tells us blah, 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 so forth and so on.
Right.
So you have to be on top of your game, and I don't think that was the case back then.
Oh. All right, so a little interesting fact that I found out is that the U.S. ranks 14th in the world in education. We've mentioned how technology is changing things, how we have this thing in our pocket at the tip of our fingertips affecting us daily. Chris, if you were to reform the educational system here in the U.S. today, where would you start?
It's tough to give you a really straight answer on that. I would say that one of the biggest issues, not just in education, but in America, is a sense of entitlement with everyone. And this affects teachers, this affects parents, this affects students. A lot of us like to think like we know everything.
Yeah, that's
or that we know better than everybody, or the world owes us everything, I think if we kind of humbled ourselves and said, you know what, I don't know it all as a teacher.
Yeah.
I don't know it all as a student. I don't know it all as a parent. And kind of kept that open mind. It's like, maybe what they're telling me or what they're saying to me makes sense. And of course you're always going to ask questions. I mean, like we stated before in the previous question, with the parents' education level rising, you're going to get questions. You better be on top of your game. You better know what you're talking about. But I think there are certain people, and maybe it might not even be an American issue. It might just be a worldwide issue. I don't know. I can't speak with authority on that. But I think people have certain arrogance about things. And I think that affects...
I'd say not arrogance as much as a sense of inflated confidence, because, and it goes back to the fact that you can Google something. Just because you hit this and you put it into a search engine, well, are you really going to weed through 600-700 different sources? Or are you going to take the first Wikipedia says and move on? So if a parent says to you, well, I know this, that, and the other, and you go, well, you have to be able to say, I have more information because of, and here's why, without being cocky about it,
Right.
Because a kid, how many times has a kid said to you, well, I looked it up and it says this, and we're like, well, guess what? Wikipedia doesn't tell you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So you're fighting that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like WebMD. Hey doctor,
all of a sudden everybody's
I think I have cancer because WebMD said that. Okay.
Especially with teaching students to kind of humble themselves and not be as entitled.
Yeah.
I think it opens up their mind to saying, maybe I don't know all the answers. Maybe it's a good idea to be able to collaborate with others, because you work with certain kids that think that they know it all, and there are kids in the classroom environment that don't like working with other kids because they feel like they're superior to them in knowledge. And you have to be able to work with that kid and say, hey, you're really intelligent. You're not going to put them down, but it might help to be able to work with other people, because you might gain a different perspective and gain more knowledge or something.
I think my response to the question kind of ties into this in a lot of different ways. My thoughts are simply, you got to let some of these kids fail. You got to let them fall on their face. You got to let them realize that whether whether they get a good grade on something or not is less important as are they able to work with their peers? Are their peers willing to work with them? Are you able to understand and speak intelligibly about something?
That's very
as
adult.
opposed,
That's very adult thing to do.
well, you have to. You get out of school. Most jobs that you are going to encounter in life, you're going to have to work with other people.
Right.
Bottom line, and if you can't do that, then you're going to be less successful. Well, we're trying to teach that at even the elementary levels on through, but a lot of times it's like these parents and students alike, they're so afraid of failure. And when I say failure, I mean getting any grade that's below a certain mark, whether that's for them 70, 80, 90, whatever the case may be. And you have to be able to fail. And I don't think as a society, as a culture, as a nation, I think we've gone away so far, the pendulum has swung so far from people being willing to accept a failure that it hinders us, because now we give these in some cases just inflated grades just to give a kid a grade so we don't have to hurt their ego, we don't have to hurt their sense of self being confidence. Look, bottom line, you talk about these heroes in industry or these heroes in technology or these heroes in whoever, the people who are highly successful, heck, even the athletic people. Do you know how many times they have failed before they have succeeded and become the star that they are? And if they weren't allowed to have fallen on their face and failed time after time after time, they wouldn't have gotten to where they are. And a lot of these kids, they just can't face that and they're afraid of it. And I think kind of it permeates the entire society, unfortunately. I mean, you've got...
I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm guilty of that today as an adult. Like, I have a job and, like, I want to do the best job that I have. And, like, I panic about maybe not doing it like completely the first time, or hey, I don't want this to go wrong, and like I know I get anxiety.
But you're willing to put effort into that, and when you do the job, your boss is going to tell you honestly whether you did or didn't meet expectations, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is, let's say you do the job whether you feel like you've done your best or you haven't done your best, but your boss comes up to you and rather than telling you didn't, meet your quota or you didn't meet expectations, they kind of pat you on the back and tell you, oh, it's okay, because they don't want to hurt your psyche, your ego, your confidence. That's not going to be favorable for the company. That's not going to be well, that's kind of what we do in education. If these kids, 2 + 2 is 5. No, it's not. It's 4. But it's a good try. It's okay. And then instead of telling them, learn from the mistake and do it right the next time, we better coddle them a little bit. And I think that's why we have the kids, like how you began your thought with this feeling of entitlement. We have a lot of kids that's why they are. They've never been told, no, that's not right. They've been always told,
hey, yeah, great job.
Yeah.
And I think...
Trophies for participation.
It's also the mindset of being such an achievement-based society.
Yes.
I believe with a growth mindset, like you said, it's okay to fail. What did you learn from failing? What did you learn from getting that question wrong? What did you learn from failing the test?
Yes.
It happened to me in college. I learned the hard way. I took a test. There were only 4 grades in that class. First test, I got 100 on it. Okay, good. Second test, I got a 13.
And when you went back and studied that material, is that the material you became stronger in and learned better?
And yes, I did a lot better on it, and I did much better on my second exam. I got like 113 or something. I got a really, really good grade.
Yeah.
Right? But because I learned from that mistake and falling flat on my face and making a 13 because I became arrogant. I said I didn't need to study for this class. I'm going to get a good grade anyway. Turns out that I'm not the hotshot that I thought I was.
Yeah.
And it's a very humbling experience. And I feel like people need those humbling experiences to say, okay, maybe I don't know it all and I need to keep an open mind. And from there, you experience the growth. And I think it's important for a kid to be able to experience that growth. Okay, I didn't do this right, but I learned from it. It's not going to happen again. or if it does happen again, it's not going to be to a certain extent.
I think something wrong with our culture today is that we live more in the workplace than at home. Chris, you mentioned achievements, like, at work, you're like, said, hey, I got 100 on my test, give me something. Hey, I met your quota, give me something. And maybe that does go back to that. You can sort of see the bridge.
It's the entitlement attitude.
The entitlement attitude that we have.
The something I'm giving you for doing a good job is your paycheck. But that's not enough. I want more.
Right.
I can't give you any more.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, I was laughing, or it's kind of funny because me and a couple colleagues were talking about this the other day. It's interesting how some of these kids are coming out, and I call them kids because, 22, 23 years old, to me, that's a kid. They're coming out of college and they think, okay, so I've got my degree, I'm going to start my job. And then 3 years later, why am I not CEO yet?
Yeah.
It's like you have to pay the price. You have
Right.
to put in the study hours. You have to put in the effort. You have to, be willing to, fail, and then that's how you grow. So
I'm reminded of Dante's Divine Comedy. In the second book, he visits the island of Purgatory, and in the first circle that he sees is the proud, and their punishment is that they have to carry a rock over their head, where it forces them to lower their heads to the ground, and then that's where we get the word humility, because in believe Latin it means close to the ground, and that's what the proud have to do. They have to force themselves to hit the ground and be the lowest of the low to learn humility. So I'm
never thought about it.
I'm
like
reminded. I'm. It's sort of. It's.
I only
it's-
read the Inferno.
Okay, so you got to go to the second
I
one.
never
Okay.
read the Purgatorio or the
Paradise.
Paradiso.
Yeah. All right.
But yes, I mean the entitlement, and you know what, it permeates all aspects of society. I think it's the reason why we have some of the troubles that we have today. People don't want to think that they're wrong.
It's
You look at the
it's a
presidential
pride.
election.
It's a pride swallowing thing.
It's a pride thing. Both candidates in this election, they don't want to own up to their mistakes. They don't want to own up to the fact that they may have said something wrong or they have done something wrong. It goes both ways, and kids see that. And kids see that, and it's seen.
Kids will call you on your BS quicker than an adult will.
Yeah.
And they hold it over you,
Not even that they hold it over; they just call you on it because they haven't learned the art of being politically correct. They're just call you on it, and I think there's a refreshingness to that, But they can also, when a kid calls you on it, don't keep defending an issue that you clearly are wrong about. They're not going to respect you. You look them in the face and say, "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Here's what I should have said." They let it go. Whereas, like Chris is saying, these people, they stick to their guns. Well, no, the evidence is clearly contrary to, but they stick to it.
All right, so kind of wrap up the show. I'm gonna ask you one last question. So I know teachers nowadays have some sort of access to like a data analysis on how kids are doing. So it's just like any professional athlete on how many free throws are they hitting, how many points in the paint do they have, or in my favorite sport is baseball, like what's your batting average? You have some sort of metric to tell you how you're doing. Teachers have now access to these same methods. How much value do you add to these data analysis in contrast to say your gut instinct about how well the student is doing in your class? Eric, we'll start with you.
Well, the way that there is a balance. The data is there. It's useful. It's helpful. But I think when you say using your gut instinct, I don't think we have instincts. I think we have them as a baby. Like a physical response to, the baby has the rooting reflex. When it's time to eat, sort of thing. I don't think outside of that though. Call
it intuition then.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's all learned behavior. It's everything that we do, everything that we go off of is going to have been a learned behavior in a previous situation. So you begin to see patterns in how people are, how they move, how they respond to certain situations, and you begin to be able to, especially knowing groups of kids, okay, this group is going to need this help. You know, your first period and your third period might be Algebra 1. You're going to teach them completely different because you've learned what they need. In terms of the data, though, I think if you just look at raw numbers, it's helpful. But what that means in terms of teaching is, are you willing to use that to reflect on your practices? You know, a baseball player, to use your sport there, if they're hitting against lefties just abysmally, you know, let's say their batting average against righties is, 400, but their batting average against lefties is like 178.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I got to do to adjust when I'm facing this kind of an opponent? How do I have to change my stance? How do I have to change my approach? Do I have to, curl my wrist a little more? Whatever the case
Mechanics,
may
yeah,
be.
you gotta work on that.
Exactly. And they study that and they try to improve on that. Teaching is no different. It's just, it might not be a physical, mechanical change,
Right.
but you have to be willing to say, okay, this data is telling me that I have a deficiency here. And the painful part comes into admitting I have a deficiency here. And people, going back to kind of like the previous topic, that pride issue, are you willing to face what the data is telling you? And despite, I know I taught the lesson, the kids just didn't learn it. No, they didn't learn it. What do you have to change? And if you're willing to face that, which can be sometimes painful, and make adjustments, then you're gonna be a rock star, in any sport, in any event, in any capacity, whether it's teaching or playing a game. Face it, deal with it, own it, and make adjustments. But I think sometimes we get into, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, you can't tell me nothing. Well, you need to change.
Right.
Because the kids are different. The environment's different. The expectations are different.
That's life.
It's life. Don't become stagnant.
Chris?
With data analysis, I believe it is a great way to be able to gauge how the students are doing to a certain extent. There are some kids that are not good test takers. And the way that we have set up our assessments in this state, or really in this country, how everything is a push towards standardized testing.
High stakes, yeah.
High stakes. Some kids don't deal well with that pressure. And I've had several kids who can give you the best answers in class when they're relaxed, when, they feel like they're in a safe environment. But the minute that you put a test in front of them,
Anxiety shoots through the roof.
anxiety shoots in there, and it just stops them. And unfortunately, we've had some kids who are solid in their, mathematics, but they don't do as well on their exams because they just let that anxiety get to them. With the data analysis, with being able to see what questions that your kids missed, you're able to kind of hone in and say, you're right, I didn't teach this lesson well. I didn't teach my kids properly how to find the area of a triangular prism. Like, I didn't teach them the formula correctly, or, there was a day where I just wasn't on my A game, and that's why they did poorly on this section.
Yeah.
So data analysis is useful so that you can go back and make those adjustments as the year goes on. What adjustments do you need to make? And so whenever they get to that high stakes test, you can remediate them to the point where they don't feel like they should be anxious about it. You've seen this 100 times. We've over prepared you. You should be fine. But there's some kids that still cave into the pressure. But the more you get the kids relaxed, and the more that you expose them to something, and as you fix your mistakes through data analysis, you get them more comfortable. You get them more confident in their ability to do well. I'm not just a standardized test. I'm just a subject.
Just
period.
learning.
Just learning.
Think about how fun learning is at elementary school. Let's play games. Let's do this. You don't really, at least in the state of Texas, we don't start high stakes testing until the third grade.
Yeah.
And you start seeing some of these kids freeze up. You take all the learning out of it, and all of a sudden, for example, my daughter, she's going into second grade. She's excited about going back to school.
Huh.
I'm curious to see how she's going to respond when she has to, listen to, the STAR test. The STAR test. You have to do well on the STAR test.
Yeah.
You better do well on this, because the kids hear that every day, and so that in itself can build up.
Are we causing that anxiety, or
the short answer is yes. The longer answer would be, when you have politicians who make platforms that say we are strong in education, and the only way that
we rank 14th in the world, man.
Yeah, but think about it. The people, whether at the state level or the federal level, they want to get elected. So they play to the heartstrings of the parents and say, we're going to be strong in education. Trust us with your kids. Problem is, they make policies, procedures, and expectations, and they have never taught in the classroom a day in their life. They haven't been in a classroom since they were a student in a classroom. So they have no idea what that is like. And then that gets translated down to the administration at the district level, who then say, okay, here's the new guidelines, guys. And then we go in and we tell the teachers, here's the expectations. And the teachers are going, are you kidding me? It's simply put, like the way No Child Left Behind was written, I think the deadline originally would have been 2014. You know, you started off, X number of kids were supposed to pass this test. Next year, more kids were supposed to pass the same test, so forth and so on, till 100% of the students were supposed to pass 100% of the test 100% of the time. That is an impossibility. It will never happen. Yeah. But the minute somebody says, at the political level, that's an impossibility that never happened, their opponent's going to go, oh, he's not strong in education. So it's kind of like, you know, let the teachers teach, get out of the classroom. They know what's going on. You know, ease up on these kids. The standardized test isn't the end-all, be-all. You know, let these kids show what they know over time. Find a different way to assess them. And I think that number 14 would rise tremendously. Yeah.
And to piggyback on it, I think with the politicians that have never been in there a day as a teacher, you know, it causes tension when it trickles down through admin with the teachers, because then it feels like the teachers can't really trust admin at certain points. And I mean, I'm sure Eric has seen it as well, you know, at various times when he has to delegate something because of something that somebody above him said, and he has to tell us, and then the teachers were like, well, I don't want to do that, you know. It just, if the politicians I felt were more educated, you know, no pun intended, on what actually goes on in the classroom, how students learn, what are the best methods to be able to teach our kids and help them grow, I think we would have less issues like that.
I think the funny part about it is it's also a pride thing. It seems to come back to pride on a lot of this. So think about this. Nobody is going to say, hey, I've been a patient before. I had surgery once. Let me go into this classroom and into this operating room and tell the surgeon how to do their job. And the problem is people say, well, I was a student. I've been to school, so I know what it doesn't mean you know how to educate somebody else. It doesn't mean you know the practices and the methods that are going to help a group of people learn. It's not a step one, step two. No. Just because you've been a student doesn't mean you should be able to tell teachers how to teach. Just because you've been a surgery patient doesn't mean you should go into a surgical environment and start dictating what surgeons ought to be doing. You don't have a clue. But it's kind of one of those things where, what's that adage? Those who can do and those who can't teach, or something ridiculous like that. It ticks me off teaching to no end, because I think in order to teach somebody else, you have to know it at a deep level. It's that craft thing that you were mentioning about earlier. Yeah. And we tell kids all the time, to go back to one of those things that Chris brought up about the whole interactive classroom and get the kids engaged. You know, we tell kids all the time, you want to learn something better, teach it to somebody else. And that will only reinforce their learning. You know, so if you're going to tell a group of educators you need to do X, get in the classroom, put on the shoes of an educator, and be there first. And then you'll be able to stand back and go, is this a realistic expectation? Yes or no? Is it going to benefit kids? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, get out of the way.
I have to agree with that. I think, like I said, I think if the politicians just knew more about what actually goes on, and they went to school 30, 40 years ago. It's a totally different environment now. It's a totally different environment now. The kids have changed. You know, the demographics have changed. It's just, if they got more educated, it would be better.
All right, and I think with that, we'll wrap things up. Certainly a lot of food for thought in our discussion tonight. We're going to have to continue this again another time. We've reached the end of our show. I would like to thank everyone for listening. Please remember to follow us on the social medias. My name is Andy Ortiz. Thank you.